and welcome to Live in the Hive. I'm Michelle Eagleton and you're watching the only online magazine show dedicated to theatre across Greater Manchester. And by goodness, haven't we got a wonderful amount of theatre in our fabulous city. Now, have we had a good week? Are we enjoying the weekend? Well, stick with me for the next 30 minutes and hopefully that weekend will get even better, especially if you want a bit of theatre news, interviews and even a musical performance. But who have we got on the show tonight? Well, we have got these two wonderful guests this evening. We've got the fantastic Christina Bianco, who you may have seen from YouTube when she went viral about 9 years ago now. She is absolutely fantastic. And joining us as well, we've got Alexis Gregory. He's going to be telling us all about his show that he's written and performed in called Riot Act. And if that wasn't enough, of course, every week we bring you the latest Greater Manchester theatre news, and there's been some wonderful announcements this week. And as you can see there on our crawler underneath, we've got Christina Bianco singing us out of the show. It is going to be a really epic night tonight. So without further ado, shall we start the show? Of course. Now, tonight we're going to kick the show off with that wonderful Christina Bianco. As I said, she rose to fame in all our eyes back in 2013 when she went viral on YouTube. She was known as a woman with 19 voices, and these weren't just voices. Oh no, these were the divas. Yes, things like Celine Dion, Adele, you name them. Now she's currently starring in the tour of The Rise and Fall of Little Voice. But what I wanted to do was take her back to that day in 2013 when it all kicked off, when she released a video of Total Eclipse of the Heart. And here's what she had to say about it.
It was so surreal, so odd to me, because people kept saying things like, look, you're an overnight sensation. And it's like, I had been singing and acting and performing my whole life and always did impressions just for a bit of fun, really, like a party trick. Never anything I thought would lead my career to grand places and take me to places it's taken me. Up until that point, I was just doing a lot of impressions in the shows in New York City, Forbidden Broadway, which spoofs the Broadway shows and their stars. So in it, I was impersonating people like Kristen Chenoweth, contemporary Broadway star, or Barbara Streisand, or Julie Andrews, more classic Broadway stars, and a show called Musical, which spoofed the news and pop culture. So I was doing this, reading somebody else's script and doing impressions like a sketch comedy show. And again, live. So if you made a mistake, if I didn't think something was good, it was gone. That's the beauty of live theater. It's different every night. So that video, the first video that really went viral, me singing Total Eclipse of the Heart in 19 voices, I had never done it before. I'd never even attempted an Adele impression before. It was loud. It was rowdy. I can't tell you how it was so close to not posting it, because I was like, oh, this is just a bit of a mess. But the audience seemed to be having fun. What the heck? I'll just post it. And if people want to be mean and say these impressions stink, that's fine. It was just amazing. I woke up to my phone blowing up and inquiries from small publications and massive media companies and from the Ellen DeGeneres show and all that. So the fact that just uploading one little video, when you work so hard, your whole life to like hone your craft and be a great entertainer, and then something you do just on a whim at midnight is what brings you to global attention. It was just absolutely crazy. I still can't get over it, but I'm so glad that it's been enabled me to take my career in so many places I never thought possible, and ultimately lead me now to my dream role of playing LV in Little Voice.
I think, there's so many similarities to you and Little Voice, because you started doing these impersonations when you were young without even knowing, because you were singing along to records, and wasn't it your mum and dad that were like, whoa,
exactly right,
like these artists.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I'm very much like LV, except my parents are alive and well and get along. My parents say that they would hear me singing along to Judy Garland in The Wizard of Oz, like LV, and Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, and anything on the radio, from Edith Piaf to Marilyn Monroe to, gosh, when I grew up, we had Madonna and the Spice Girls and all that. And I would just sort of sing along and take on the tone and style of whoever was singing. I didn't do it to get attention at that point and be like, look, I'm doing an impression of so-and-so. It was just something I did. And in fact, when I wanted to, perform, and my parents were, taking me to dance classes and theater classes and auditions and all that, my mom would always say to me, honey, don't sing it like the recording, sing it like you. And I thought it's my impression of my mother, which she hates. So don't tell her I did that. But I always thought that she just meant, make it your own. But looking back, I would very naturally just assimilate and take on what I was listening to. And so even though I did have my own voice, it's always been really easy for me to snap into other people's. Obviously, some more difficult than others. And then once I wanted to do impressions, I had to study them and work very, very hard to build the amount that I currently do. But yeah, like LV, I just grew up listening to so many different styles and genres, and sort of through osmosis, some of these voices came to me.
That's brilliant. I mean, last night I went to see the Cher show, which is currently on at the Opera House, and I had to play the songs in the car on the way home, so I put on Stronger, and I was there trying my best to do my own Cher impersonation, and I was like, "This isn't going to happen, Michelle. This isn't." But
Cher, you have a much lighter voice than Cher. Cher's got a very low voice.
Enough and I was like, "No, I sound like Elvis gone wrong."
She's hard for me. I always say I don't like to do Cher. I leave it to a lot of the male performers. I think they do a better job than I do.
Absolutely. Who's your favorite to do though, Christina? Because there's so many that
it's like picking it's like picking a favorite child or something. It's like you can't really do it. But I always say that I love Celine Dion, of course, more contemporary, because Celine, she has a particular way of speaking. She makes the faces. She's a complete package for someone to impersonate, because not only is her voice so distinct as a singer, it's so much fun to even attempt to sing her incredible material, but she's got so many mannerisms and bits that make her unique. That's what I love. And a lot of the contemporary celebrities today, they don't have these really distinct voices or distinct mannerisms. It's sort of unique quality that made these women stars. I feel like a lot of today's performers try to all blend in, and I like the ones that stand out. So another favorite would be, and I have to mention it because she is a big part of Little Voice, is Judy Garland, who I've mentioned before. I've always loved her. I've always idolized her, maybe because she was famously 4'11" like me, little lady with a big voice. But what I love about doing Judy Garland is that because her voice changed so much over her life, even within Little Voice, I get to show that. So at one point in the show, actually when the audience first hears me doing an impression, I'm singing the Judy Garland song, "The Man That Got Away." Now that is from the film A Star Is Born. She sang it throughout her whole life, and she almost never sang it again the way that she sang it in the film. So when I do it as a more mature Judy Garland. The road gets rougher, it's lonelier and tougher. A little deeper, a slower vibrato, the shake in the voice. But then at another point in the show, I sing Somewhere Over the Rainbow, and I feel like the way to do that is to do it like Judy in the film. And that's much softer. Somewhere over the rainbow. Her vibrato is a little faster, a little more youthful. And so having that balance, like within one show, I'm just obsessed with her. So I'm really glad that I can show both those colors kind of under one umbrella. So yeah, Judy's one of my favorite now.
And you've also added to this production, because haven't you recommended a couple?
Don't know what you're talking about.
Could there be a little bit of Stiller in there and a bit of Streisand?
Oh yes, we've been open long enough now that I can give away that we were thinking, the director and producers and I were thinking about who we could put into the medley into the show. LV does eventually perform a nice big long medley, and it's the first time that she's ever doing impressions in public. And although she's not a trained and confident performer, she has to channel these women. So it has to be artists that she would have listened to all the time and would have seen on television. So that's why we thought, okay, who can fit into this that I can actually do? Unfortunately, Celine Dion, didn't make the cut, not around at that point. But you couldn't leave out Barbra Streisand, because she was a diva of that era and had so much fame everywhere globally. It was very frequently on television. So we added Barbra Streisand, and Cilla Black is mentioned many times in the script. There are a few impressions of her written into the show later. And I thought, well, I've never seen an LV do Scylla in the medley, and Jane Horrocks in the film, they didn't even put Scylla in the film. So I thought the best way to honor such an icon, particularly a Northern British icon, which is so important to the piece, would be to get Scylla in. So I've worked very hard on my Scylla impression, but you're going to have to come to the show to see it, because I've got to get you all in somehow.
You mentioned Streisand there. I know Streisand is close to your heart because you got the chance to play Fanny Bryce, didn't you, in Paris, in Funny Girl. That must have been incredible, Christina.
I have to tell you, it was one of those experiences when I got the part, I just thought, wow, I've wanted to play the part for so long, had never even been allowed to audition for any production before. No one went, no, she's not right for it. I was like, what, are you kidding me? I'm such a quirky New Yorker, like, this is for me. But no one ever saw me before. And so then to just book this one was a thrill of my life. Going from a part like Fanny Bryce to have the next part I do be LV is so much fun, because like I said, Fanny was so brassy and loud and LV is so quiet. And I have to do a northern accent and be very soft. So it's such a great balance for me as an actor. And then also to somehow still sneak in a little bit of Don't Rain on My Parade's.
I know. I think that's brilliant. And this time, obviously, you're doing it as Barbara, as LV.
Which was weird.
Yeah. I think
because I was so used to singing it as me.
Yeah, exactly. And then you mentioned as well the whole Lancashire and the northern accent.
Yeah, it was a big challenge for me, because people went, oh, you can do impressions, that'll be fine. And I was like, yeah, but an accent is very different than an impression. An impression is subjective. An impression you can make your own. An accent is right or it's wrong. So I've had to work very hard over before we started rehearsals, I started working with a dialect coach over Zoom. And then in the rehearsal room, I had a lot of talks with the fabulous, wonderful Shobna Gulati, who plays my mother, Mari, in the show. Her performance is unbelievable. Her accent is slightly different than mine, because I was trained to do slightly different. And then she said, no, that's fine, though, because everyone's got a bit of something different. So if I was in real life, if I had a father and mother that had slightly different accents, I'd find my own way between them. So that's what we've got. But believably, everybody is from the north, and we've had no complaints, so I'm doing okay.
The one, the only, little boys, little boys.
Forget your troubles, come on, get happy. You gotta chase all your cares away. Shout hallelujah, come on, get happy. Get ready, get ready, get ready for the judgment day.
More from Christina later on as she sings us out of the show with a fantastic Diva medley. You won't want to miss it. Still to come on Live in the Hive, I'm going to be talking to Alexis Gregory about his hard-hitting play, Riot Act. It really is fantastic. It's wowing audiences up and down the country, and he not only performs in it, but he has also written it as well. But firstly, time for this. We do it every week. It is, of course, Greater Manchester Theatre News. And what has been announced this week? Well, the Lowry have revealed the cast for the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. You might remember this as a film starring Judi Dench. Now, it's coming to the stage, and look at that cast. Gosh, Hayley Mills, Hollywood actress, remember from The Parent Trap, Whistle Down the Wind. You've got Paul Nicholas, remember Just Good Friends, and obviously hugely a star in the theatre world from things like Jesus Christ Superstar and the early days of Cats. And Paula Wilcox, you might recognise from Coronation Street. Yes, rings a bell? Absolutely. Now, the Best Exotic Marigold Hotel runs from the 8th to the 12th of November at the Lowry in Salford. And if you don't know what the premise is all about and you haven't seen the film, well, it's basically British retirees setting off for an adventure of a lifetime in India. I'm not going to tell you anymore. You'll just have to go and see it. As I say, a really exciting production coming our way very, very soon. Now, something else that's coming to the Lowry a little bit sooner in August is the critically acclaimed Riot Act. It's a celebration of queer activism across the decades, and it is performed and written by the wonderful Alexis Gregory. It tells a story of three men, one of whom was involved in the the Stonewall riots back in 1969. And I asked Alexis, how important is it to make sure the youth of today are aware of things like Stonewall?
I still meet a lot of people who say, I didn't actually know what Stonewall was. I'd never heard of Stonewall until I saw your show. People say, I knew a bit about it, but seeing your show, I realized how little I knew. And with this show, I created it so that a 15, 16, 17-year-old queer person could find it as interesting as an 80-year-old queer person from the community. I didn't want to speak to people who already knew about some of this and just tell them what they already know. Wherever on that line you were with how much you knew about queer history, it had to be new information for an hour, because I'm asking people to come out their house and watch me for an hour. And yeah, it's history, it's important, but also with this show, we follow the three characters. That's Michael, who was there on the night of the Stonewall riots in New York. He was 17 on his first night out in New York. It's very rare to find a survivor from that time. And I've interviewed him and I play him in my show. I play a radical drag queen from the 1970s, Lavinia Co-op, who is still performing. And I play Paul Burston, a prominent activist in regards to AIDS, HIV, and gay and lesbian rights, as they were called at the time. Paul's now a very established journalist and author in his own right. So yeah, we look at these moments in their lives and in the community's history, but we follow each character into 2022 as well.
Wow.
So in the case of Michael, we start with him as a 17-year-old kid, first night out, to being almost 70, and what he thinks of the younger generation and what he thinks of how history is being told.
And I think that's really important, because when you're seeing it through somebody else's eyes, it becomes more real. It's not like turning a page in a history book. It's actually, these were real people. They are still these real people. And they have these incredible stories that need to be told for us to progress.
Yeah, and it's really important they are seen as real people. So it's never just the facts with any of the three of them. I find out about their childhood. I find out about their family. I find out about their struggles, their triumphs, their flaws. They might contradict themselves because these are real people. So the show is a mixture between the personal and the political. It's very funny. It's very bittersweet. It's outrageous. It's not a safe show. The characters don't hold back. They say some things that might make people have to question themselves. But that's important. And I think it's really important that we don't just show LGBTQ plus lives on screen or on stage that are all nicely and neatly tied up with a nice, pretty rainbow bow on them, because that's not life, you know? And we don't have to sanitize our stories to make them more palatable, A, to the community, or B, further outside of the community. You know, we shouldn't just be allowed in spaces as long as everything's nice and tidy and neat and just, you know, the easy option. I'm much more interested in opening up conversations that may not be ordinarily happening.
100%. And, you know, you have had ticks of so many critics along the way. You know, I've heard that the show has been called compelling, a standout piece of theatre. It's been captivating. And as you say, hard hitting. But how do you put that together? Because you're a writer and performer. You've done these interviews with these three incredible people. And I'm imagining the interviews weren't just kind of 10 minutes here or there. So how do you collect that information and make it a 1 hour show?
You're absolutely right. So hours of interviews per guy. Really, I just did one session with them, apart from Michael, who was in LA, and I interviewed him over Facebook video chat, and I had to do it twice because the first time I didn't record it properly. But I spoke to Michael twice. I spent an afternoon with Lavinia in Lavinia's flat, and then I spent an evening with Paul over dinner, bearing in mind Paul was also a friend of mine. And Paul is a writer himself, and he said that as I was interviewing him, he could see what I was doing. I was shaping the play and I was writing it as I was delving into their lives. I was saying, stop, go back, tell me more about that. As I say, looking for the things that were contradictory, the things that were interesting, the things that I didn't know, the little bits of information that get lost over time, the little details that were new to me. For example, Paul, whose story focuses on the AIDS crisis, saying that when AIDS first came over to the UK, people were saying, don't sleep with Americans, don't hang out with American gay men because it's only the American gay men who've got it. You'll be okay.
Oh.
Don't go to Earl's Court because that's where all the gay American tourists used to go. It was the big gay area in the 80s. And of course, that seems very naive now, but I'd never really heard that before. Even the way that Paul spoke about the mid-90s gay scene and how that was almost post-AIDS as the medication started to come through and it was starting to get brushed under the carpet. And there were new generations coming through saying, we don't want to live under this threat. And it's very interesting because that's when I first started going out into clubs and things like that. And I worked it out with Paul. We were probably in the same clubs many, many times, but never met. And I was just like, I was still at school. I was sneaking in underage. But Paul was a good few years ahead of me and having a very different experience. Yeah. And Paul talks about, he was processing his trauma on the dance floor. He was saying that the party scene that really went next level in London in the 90s was a reaction against all those years of grief. I thought, wow, that's so interesting. I was going into that scene, but for different reasons, because it was an escape from school and all these kind of things.
And all of this is kind of relived on stage. And as a performer, you know, it must be very challenging physically as well, because it's a one-man show and you're putting on one character, then you're moving up to, I mean, let's take a look at the trailer and see you in action.
There was something about gays and Judy Garland.
There's something about drag. AIDS made us visible.
Being an actor was really good fun.
I want to live. I want to survive.
How I managed to survive it in London.
As an older person, you couldn't give a
Whack the cop on the head with it.
These things still happen.
The gays started fighting back.
How are you going to do the voice? I finally found a home.
That's incredible. How do you keep that energy up for an hour?
I'm not going to lie, it is hard. I have to really, really look after myself, especially on the tour. So I really travel around on my own. Sometimes my tour producer might come out and meet me at the different venues. Perhaps he's hosting a post-show Q&A with me, which is also a really important conversation with the audience that continues after the show finishes. But yeah, I have to look after myself. I have to look after my voice. I know it all sounds a little bit Mariah Carey, doesn't it? Like, you know, I don't look at anyone in the eye after 6 p.m.
As long as you don't have your water at room temperature, Alexis.
Yeah. No, the vodka's at room temperature, but not the water. Yeah, I really do have to look after myself. It is demanding. I every journey, wherever I'm traveling for 2 hours, 4 hours, I'm re-looking at the lines. Even though I've been performing this show since 2018, you can never take it for granted that the show's going to run itself and you'll go on to autopilot. Yeah. And even though I'm the writer of the show, every time I'm looking at the lines, I'm still finding new things in them. People like Rob, the producer, Ricky, the director, who come and see the show again and again, they say, wow, you're still finding new things in it, because they know the show inside out. And if I do a slight little tweak with one line, they notice it. But that's how it evolves and stays fresh.
And it also stays fresh and evolves with the fact that you are making it digital as well. So you've had a lot of hybrid performances on tour. And, you know, when it comes to Salford, we get it digitally, which I think is fantastic in terms of making it accessible for all.
Yeah, that's totally the reason. So it means anyone, anywhere can watch it. It's fantastic that the Lowry are hosting that for me in August. It will be on their website for a week. And I'm hoping to be there. I'm hoping to be there for an in real life screening as well, where we'll do a screening in the room, in the theatre, and I can introduce the screening. And then again, with Rob, my producer, we'll do a post-show talk and people can chat about the themes that have been brought up in the digital recording. And just to stress, Michelle, the digital recording it's not like I've just performed the show with a camera, you know, halfway at the back of the auditorium. It's almost like a film. So we've really, really pushed the production levels of it.
And I can vouch that it is absolutely fantastic. The way it's shot, the visuals, it just feels like you've got that complete experience. So it is great. And to have you as a double whammy as well, you know, kind of like coming on and then having the show, I think that's perfect. I can't wait to get to Salford.
I hope so. I hope we can do it. It's really nice. It's almost like it's become like appearing at a film festival where, you know, the film is shown and the filmmaker comes forward and speaks and meets the audience. So it is a hybrid tour for Riot Act 2022. Again, the whole tour's been reinvented with the live dates, the digital, the in real life screenings of the digital. We're doing workshops. So I'm meeting local LGBTQ plus groups or local youth theatre groups. I've got about 3 or 4 of those workshops on the tour. I'm teaching them and exploring themes around creating LGBTQ plus work or playing those characters. And the Q&As, as I said, they've never just been like a little add-on for another 20 minutes after the show. They go much deeper than that. And people really want to talk about this show.
Alexis Gregory doing some great work there for the LGBTQ plus community and bringing those conversations to the stage with Riot Act. And of course, you can see that at the Lowry later on this year. And if you want to find out what is going on in our wonderful city, find out where to eat, drink, and news about the theatre, you know where to go. You can pop along to the I Love Manchester website and find out all you need to know about Manchester. And talking about Manchester, well, we're always out and about in the city centre going to theatre shows throughout the week. So give us a follow on our socials. We're at Live in the Hive 21 on Twitter and Instagram. A big thanks to my guests this evening on the show, Christina Bianco and the wonderful Alexis Gregory. And I'm going to leave you with a brilliant performance from Christina. I did say she's a woman of 1,000 voices. I tell no lies. This performance shows her playing some of the divas that she does so wonderfully in the rise and fall of Little Voice. She's got Streisand and Bassy. Who could ask for anything more? Enjoy, and I'll see you next week.
Don't tell me that I live just hidden thought. Life's candy and the sun's the ball of butt. Don't bring around a cloud to read one more. Parade how much my bundle. I'll beat my drum. And if I'm found out you're tired of that song, at least I didn't fake it. Guess I didn't make it ready for me, love, cause I'm a plumber. Singing all how much my heart to know. I need no nobody is gonna wait on my Funny how a lonely day can make a person say, what good is my life? Funny how a breaking heart can make me start to say, what good is my life? Funny how I often seem to think I find